everyone.
Happy Monday.
Welcome to Sermon Break.
Yep.
We're so excited to be back.
We're so excited to be back. I feel like if I were to take all of the sermon breaks that we've ever done together, one of us is saying the opposite every time. One of us is like, hey, everyone. The other one's like, happy Monday. Anyways, that's so funny.
We're in tune, I guess. We
Yeah.
have our famous sayings that we just go back and forth and say.
Yeah.
But we're so happy that you're here. We're excited to talk about the sermon. I've been loving all of the mindsets, and I
Yes.
really find that they stick in my head.
Yeah.
I think about them. I feel like I have them memorized now,
Right.
which is really, really great. Anybody else feel like they have them memorized? Do you have your sticky notes still up? How's that been going? Do you have
Yeah.
sticky notes still up in your house?
I definitely still have sticky notes up, and I think I'm going to keep adding more because I realized this morning when I was getting up, I was sitting at my desk and I was like, I don't have any on my desk. I have them on my mirror. I have them on my light switch before I leave my room, but I don't have any on my desk. So
You got to stick them on your desk.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. But this was a great mindset this past week. Pastor came back. I
Yeah.
loved it. Fired up from tour.
yes.
I heard tour was amazing.
Yeah.
Did you see some of the pictures, videos, everything
I
going
saw
on?
so many pictures and videos, and I want to shout out Tiff because I do not know how she toured being as pregnant as she is. And they did a little photo shoot of her between the
So
tour buses.
beautiful.
It was so beautiful.
Oh, so
but-
proud of her.
yeah.
What an inspiration.
That
of
would
grit.
take a lot. That's a lot of grit because touring already is exhausting, but touring while you're pregnant, that's a whole other, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. We'll have to tell her how
Yeah.
great she did by doing it.
Yes.
But I love this week's mindset. God is not against me. He's in it with me.
Yeah.
And there's just so much that I wanna talk about. But I loved how he kicked it off by calling himself Safety Steve.
Yes.
And obviously you guys know my husband's name's Steven, and we always call him Wilderness Steve
That's so
because
funny.
he loves doing stuff outside. And he's always whenever we've gone camping or something, he just has these ability to I don't know, make the tent go up really good,
Right.
or get the fire started, or he brings I don't know, these really cool peanut butter and jelly sandwiches when we've
Right.
gone camping. So it made me think of that. But I'd love to know, Safety Steve, are you a risk taker, or do you feel like you play it safe?
I feel like it depends on the scenario or the situation. I feel like most days I am Safety Steve. I play it pretty safe. But then other days I'm like, why not? Let's just do it. Let's take the risk. I wish I was more of a risk taker though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm the same way. I feel like it's very situational. I feel like I'm more safe, especially since having Grace. I'm totally the parent that's no, you need your helmet on
Yeah.
your little tiny bicycle and little tiny scooter.
Yeah.
But there's definitely times where, I don't know, it's fun living on the edge a little bit.
It is. And honestly, when Pastor Stephen yesterday was talking, he said that sometimes when you want to give your kid the helmet, it's because you're I don't want you to hit your head. And
Right.
he was saying that's how God is with us. I'd rather you just put the helmet on than have to go through hell. And I feel that way with even my friends. I'm I've already walked through this. Let me just you don't need to take a risk. Just play it safe. I know how it's going to work out.
Right.
But sometimes it's frustrating. I know my little sisters, especially my little sister Mercedes, she's stop talking to me. Let me just figure it out on my own. But I'm I already went through it.
Right.
You don't need to go through it. I went through it.
Yeah.
So,
I have a similar dynamic with my little sister because you just want to protect them
Right.
and help them all the time. But
Yeah.
sometimes, I don't know, they
Yeah.
want to do things their own way and
Yes.
learn their own lessons, which
Yeah.
is okay too. But anyways, let's talk about the sermon a little bit more. We have a clip and then we will come back and talk about it. But put your sermon takeaways in the chat right now.
God is allowing something in their life in order to bring them into alignment with Him for their future. Sometimes what God allows is for alignment. And when God sees your life getting out of alignment with the word that He has spoken and the purpose that He desires to achieve, He will allow something in your life. Even if it feels like an attack, God will use the attack of the enemy to bring you into alignment with Himself. Tell me He won't do that. Tell me He won't make you put your bicycle helmet on and take your phone if you want, because He'd rather take your phone than for you to crush your skull. And I know this isn't what you expected when we started, because I said, God is not against me. And yet I'm telling you that God is against some of the things that hurt you. God is not against you, but he is against some of the fake stuff that you call you, that is not you, that rots you and robs you of what he calls you.
I love that clip. That was definitely one of my favorite parts of the sermon, and how just this whole idea of alignment and how God really sometimes allows things to happen so that you can get into more alignment with him and that you can fully walk out your purpose.
Right.
So I'd love to know, we're diving deep pretty quickly. Has there been a time where you've kind of gone through a difficult experience and then God has realigned you through it?
Yeah, I think like everything in life, it's hard because sometimes I can't discern, is this God or is it the enemy, or what is going on? But I remember when I first came into ministry, I had this really close friend of mine who, honestly, full circle moment, because God recently restored our friendship. But when I first came into ministry, she was really mad that I couldn't make birthday parties or events or whatever the case would be. And I would get frustrated with her. I already was frustrated with her even before I came into ministry. And I was like, God, is this like, you're taking my friends away? Like, I don't understand. When in reality, he just wanted me to realign myself with him and be like, no, what kind of friends, what kind of godly friendships do you want for me? And in that season of my life, he was able to make, through that realigning, he was able to make room for me to have godly friendships that would support and push me forward in what he wanted in his will for my life. But at the time, I just was like, this is an attack. Like, this is
Right.
the worst case scenario.
Right.
When in reality, it was just God allowing certain things to happen so that I would come back into alignment with him.
And I love that you said how you've kind of redeemed this relationship with her. And I think it's through that realignment. It's you saying, okay, God, I'm going to put you first, and look how it all worked out anyways in the end, which is so good, because that's not always the case. But that's really cool that it is, and how much she taught you just about what you're looking for and the type of friend that you want to have. So that's awesome. I think for me, I think about when Stephen and I, right when we were dating, we actually booked our wedding venue before we were engaged. Okay, full stop. Put the helmet on. Probably don't do that.
Right.
Because we found that when he tried to propose to me, it kept getting blocked. Like something came up, like his plan didn't work. And then we ended up not being able to use that date because obviously we weren't engaged. The time had come and gone. And we were so frustrated, and we thought, God, like, we really felt like you put that on our hearts. Like, why did this happen? We were very frustrated. But then when it finally did end up happening, we could see that God we had to have more time together, dating and just figuring out ourselves and our life situations before we could step into this wedding season of marriage kind of thing. And now I look back and I'm so grateful that we got married later than we originally thought, because it was so much better, and we were different people. We were more prepared. We knew each other a lot more. And something that God taught us in that season was the importance of his order and his divine order, and how you always have to have things aligned with him before you make a step. And then we've carried that lesson with us through when we got our first house together, when we had our first baby, when we've made decisions in our life, just the importance of putting God in the center and not doing things out of step with him. So it's always been a lesson me and him have gone back to, and this has been 5 years in now.
Right. And I think sometimes we can get frustrated with God in those seasons because we're like, I just want this now.
Right.
Like, this just seems like what it's supposed to be. And God's like, no, that's not the case.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. It was a really challenging season, but I'm so grateful that it all worked out how it is. And now it's just a testimony, I feel like, of how we've seen God work, and how when we did finally get married, it was even more special because we knew that God was in it, that this is what he wanted, and he allowed it to happen.
Right.
So it was really great. What other takeaways do you have?
Honestly, one of my top takeaways, Pastor didn't really preach on it, but I was thinking about the Ebed-Melech, this guy. If you have not read about him in Jeremiah, you need to read about him, because the way that God uses him, and then his story is really like a thread throughout a lot of the later chapters in Jeremiah. But there's a scripture in Jeremiah 39:17-18 that I wanted to read with you all. And to give context, this is after Jeremiah is rescued. So Ebed-Melech goes, the unlikely character in the story, to rescue Jeremiah out of the pit and pulls him out. But then fast forward a little bit later, and it says, Jeremiah, the Lord speaks to Jeremiah and tells Jeremiah, go tell Ebed-Melech what I'm saying.
Right.
It says, but I will rescue you on that day, declares the Lord. You will not be given into the hands of those you fear. I will save you. You will not fall by the sword, but will escape with your life because you trust in me, declares the Lord. And this was just proof that when he rescued Jeremiah, he probably didn't know. And I'm sure he didn't know, like, okay, I'm going to rescue you and then God's going to rescue me. Like, he didn't know that there was going to be a time that he needed to be rescued. And it was just proof that, like, when you reach out, when you're lifting someone else up, God has a special reward for you, even if you don't see it in your lifetime. Like, maybe it's your legacy that you help someone and then later down the road, like, God redeems that or helps someone else in your family's life. But I just thought it was so cool that it was only a chapter later where Ebed-Melech needed to be rescued and he was worried, but God was faithful. And he used Jeremiah, the very person that he pulled out of the pit, to speak that word to him. And then he was safe. He didn't get hurt, and he should have, because it was a whole takeover of the kingdom. But
I love that. I love how the encourager, or the one that helped at first, ended up needing the help, and it all worked out for both of them. Yeah. That's so beautiful. I love that. I love that point. I've never really dived into the story before. So I love the little extra that you're giving us. For me, I really liked when he said, faith doesn't mean you won't sink. It means you won't stay there.
Right.
And I just think so many times in my life, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to sink. This is it. This is the end. And I feel like that is so much of my fleshy nature speaking. But faith really does give you the confidence that God is always going to deliver you. It might not be the way that you think or you expect, but he's always right there. He's never going to leave you. And that's why it's so important when we go through challenging situations or difficult situations that we keep our faith.
Right.
So I don't know what it is for you, but I was so encouraged, like that scripture that says faith moves, like all you need is as small as a mustard seed, right? And it's like, okay, if that's all that we have, like, why can't we believe if faith can move a mountain, then why can't our faith, like, move us?
Right.
Why don't we believe that when we keep that through whatever mountain we face, whatever difficult situation that we have, we're not going to stay there. Something's got to move.
Right.
God is going to move on our behalf, and he is going to work on our behalf.
Right.
So that was my favorite.
I love that. I feel like God is just, this whole sermon was so impactful for me. And even this idea of sinking, like Pastor was talking about, when you have a strong anointing, it comes with strong attacks.
Right.
And you just need to be prepared for that, understand that. But when I first came into ministry, I didn't think that I was going to be under attack. I thought, okay, I come into ministry, now the attacks are done. And it actually was the opposite. They got worse. They got stronger. But Pastor was saying, like, the heavier the calling, the further you sink, because the heavier the object, the further into the mud it goes. But it's also like encouraging. I felt like it was encouraging to hear Pastor say that and be like, a lot of people think, like, just because I have all this faith that I'm not going to sink.
Right.
It's like, that's not true. You're still going to sink. It's just, you're not going to stay there.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
God will always come through.
Yeah.
That's so good. I know it is so funny, right? You think that, oh, you're doing all the right things. I'm in church. I'm volunteering. But then the attack comes and you're like, well, what am I doing wrong? But it's because the devil knows that there's something valuable in you.
Right.
And I love what he said when he challenged us. Okay, every time the devil attacks you or something attacks you, send out 3 text message and retaliate and try to encourage somebody else and try to do the opposite, which really brings us to our action step.
Right. I'm going to say it wrong. I feel like you probably could say it better, but who are you lifting up this week?
Yes. Who are you lifting up this week? Who can you lift up this week as our action step? And really, we just want that to be your focus. It's going to be our focus too, of when things might go wrong, because like he said, life experience happens.
Yes.
Life is not all rainbows and flowers every single day. But when that does happen, who is somebody that we can lift up? Who is somebody that you could think about and you could send that message, make that phone call, deliver that meal, buy that coffee? Shout out our eKids director. I know Charlotte has talked about how she's blessed people with coffee in the drive-thru before and different things. And I think sometimes you can lift somebody up that you don't even know, and it can still be super, super impactful.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories ever in my life is I had this friend who a few years ago, she got really, really sick during Christmas and she was stuck in her house by herself. She couldn't see anyone. And at the time we weren't friends. I just was following her on social media and I felt God prompting me to like go bring her coffee. And I didn't know where she lived. I didn't really know who she was. And I was like, this is going to be really weird. Like, I'm going to send you a message and be like, hey, what's your address? I want to bring you something. But I did. And now she's one of my closest friends.
Aw.
And so I feel like God, like there's a reason and there's a purpose for it. But also the reward, even if it's not here, you see it, your reward is in heaven. Like
yeah.
you will be rewarded for encouraging people. Like God calls us to encourage one another.
Right. And listen to that prompting. Like you felt that kind of stirring in your heart and you acted on it. And God really honors that when you feel like you're trying to chase after him, you're trying to do the right thing, you're trying to love and care for his people. Like he sees that and he gives you that blessing of that friendship on the other side. So that's great. So be thinking about who you can lift up this week. And I'm excited to come back for Mindset 5.
Yep.
This has been the one I've been most looking forward to.
Yes.
My joy is my job. And I think, I don't know, I'm just super expectant and I can't wait. So come back to church this Sunday and start getting ready for Easter.
Yes. Easter is right
Easter.
around the corner.
Yes.
It's right around the corner. And we're excited. We get to celebrate Good Friday all together in church, at both locations here in Mississauga and in Whitby, but also Sunday morning, we will be having Easter Sunday at both locations as well.
9:30, 11:30, 10:30 in Whitby. And then we're back. We're celebrating 11 years as Elevation Church Toronto the following week with baptism. So lots of exciting things coming up. If you're interested in getting baptized or you know somebody, reach out to us. We'd love to get you connected to that. But have a great week, everybody. Lift somebody up this week and we'll see you back in church.